Hello, everyone. Once again, we are back. We are the Collar and Elbow Wrestling Podcast. I am your esteemed co-host, Kenny Oak, joined with, flanking me over to my whatever. I don't understand this camera thing.
You're bad at pointing,
It's
of all
not
things.
good. I'm not good at it. But Chris Harris,
Ah,
you're here with me as always. I love having you by my side. You're back at it again. How are you doing today?
your intro gets worse every time. You drag it out. You don't know where to point. You're all over
I'm
scatterbrained.
still getting used to the. There we look
Oh,
at that.
there you
Nice.
go. I'm right there.
Boom. There
I
it
am
is.
digitally next to you
I
in the cyber
know.
world,
But I
not
wish you were
physically.
physically next to
The
me.
shows would be better, as would the quality of the product that we're putting out. But that's not the
I
case,
think
of
the
course.
product's pretty good.
It's pretty amazing. Bubs, I'm good though. I just
Good,
watched
good,
for the
good.
second time in 3 days SummerSlam 2002, so I'm on a high right now,
Oh,
and
it's so
it's
good.
it's hard to come down from.
It is.
So I'm living life. Bubs, how are you?
Bubs, I'm doing really good. You may not be able to tell because I'm wearing my glasses, but I did just get contacts for the first time in my life, and that's a struggle.
Especially for an older man.
Older man,
So for an
what does
older
that
man like
m-
yourself,
what does
you
that
know, you're not a
mean?
well, it's
We're the
hard to hear. I
we're
understand
the
you're not a
same
young
age.
snapper of the well,
You're
you're older
you're
than me.
you're
So it's fine, Bubs. You could have got him when you were 20. You didn't. You could have got him when you were
well.
25.
I
You
also
didn't.
could have got laser eye surgery done when
You,
I was
you
still in the
didn't.
military, but
Didn't. So
didn't.
a lot of could haves, a lot of didn'ts, and
You're
here we
an
are.
okay. You're an idiot. Anyway, moving on. We are yes, we are bringing back probably one of our favorite episodes that we do, other than Wrestle Talk 101. We are doing our the thing we started with,
We did.
which is the pay per review, where we go back and watch classic WWE, WCW, ECW pay per views and give it a fresh perspective in the year 2018. Now it was 2016 when we started this thing.
Whew,
I know we've been doing this for a while,
man.
but this week it is, as you've already mentioned, SummerSlam 2002, which is I don't think it can be argued, but but SummerSlam 2002, in my opinion, is the best SummerSlam of all time.
SummerSlam 2002 is the
Yes.
best SummerSlam of all time.
Mm,
We got some plugs earlier and last week a
yes.
little bit about how 1988 was one of the better ones. 91,
88, huh?
yeah, 91 was also a good
Specifically
year.
that year.
Yeah.
91
Um,
was good. That was a good one.
Yeah, there are some good things, but this one stands so far alone. Anything else, mostly because of the people on the card and how good every single one of them was. 15 of 18 world champions. So
Yeah.
it's ridiculous.
Wow. That
Yeah.
is that is amazing to think about, just the depth of the roster at that time, and all these guys were coming up at the time. This was kind of the start of the vaunted SmackDown 6.
Hmm.
This was the first pay-per-view after the brand split, the first brand split, the original. So you saw a lot of that dynamic here on this pay-per-view. You had the split commentary teams. You had JR and the King, which many people consider the best
Classic.
duo. You also had Michael Cole and Taz, which in my opinion is
Very good.
very good, probably the most underrated commentary team there's ever been. I don't think they get enough credit. This was when Michael Cole was really at his best on the
This
commentary
was
desk.
good, Michael Cole.
Yes,
Yes.
him and Taz had a great kind of dynamic with each other, and Taz, this was before he started going like nuts, and yeah, he got progressively worse as his time on the booth went on, but he was at his best. Michael Cole, this was really good. Michael Cole, and I mean you had JR and King, and some of these matches especially the Triple H Shawn Michaels match showed why those two are considered one of the best duos
Oh
of
yeah.
all time. But
This
SummerSlam
was
2002, I mean, initial thoughts like going back into to 12-year-old us. What were your thoughts on this pay-per-view back when it happened?
this was as I watched it again, pulling up like and seeing the whole card and seeing some stuff that was occurring storyline wise. This was like right in the good part of the brand split. I mean, especially rivalry between Stephanie and Bischoff.
A weird
Big,
tension kind of thing
weird,
going on
odd
there.
tension that they had,
Yeah.
right? And that there was such good stuff going on. This was early. This was right before SmackDown decided to say, you know what, we're going to be one of the best brands ever, or
Yeah.
best time periods ever for a
Ever.
brand, because they took it and they ran with it. SmackDown 6 happens. We get a lot of good stuff that goes on here, and then we get SummerSlam. It's supposed to be the second best card of the year, and this one certainly was. But it's packed full of SmackDown's and Raw's absolute best.
Yes.
Every match on here is watchable TV, and it's not something we get all the time anymore. It's not something that you can tune in and say, you know what, SmackDown or SummerSlam's going to be great because SmackDown's going to put their best stuff up there, and Raw's going to put their best stuff up there. It's so hit and miss now. SmackDown's rather consistent, but we only get top card stuff from Raw now, and even that at these major pay-per-views, it's nothing like it used to be. And I hate to say, I don't like to compare eras. It's hard to say that 2018 should be as good as 2002 or they should be on the same playing field or anything like that, because the athletes are different. But Bubs, everyone on here is an absolute star, or was going to be, or had the potential to be, or at least was involved in something like a Lance Storm here with the Un-American gimmick that
Right.
was big boo.
It
A
was
lot
over.
of good stuff.
It was over as heels.
Oh, absolutely. So I don't know. Like, I really loved it, and it got me to the point where I'm like, yeah, best SummerSlam ever.
It was, watching it in retrospect really gives me that perspective on it. But going back and remembering kind of what I remember of the build to it and the aftermath of it, I was extremely excited, and we've gone over this hundreds of times. Shawn Michaels' his return, his big return from his 4-year absence after the back injury. I was so excited for this, Bubs. I was a huge Shawn Michaels fan. Him coming back, I couldn't have been hotter for it. And the match itself blew out expectations, and the aftermath of the match, made you come back for more. And we'll get into that later on. But also, I remember vividly my biggest memory of this card when it was happening. The build up to it were the training videos of The Rock and Brock Lesnar. It really, really showed kind of a realism. Like, hey,
Pure athletes, yeah.
pure athletes. One guy's a Division I football stud with the University of Miami. The other guy was a 4-time All-American, 2-time national champion in college wrestling. And these hype packages, showed that these are athletes. The guys doing this are pure athletes. And you want to talk about pure athletes? The show started with maybe 2 of the best athletes to ever do it. And so that's what I remember from the build when it was happening.
Yeah. The only things that I can vividly remember was I remember the King of the Ring. I remember Brock winning King of the Ring before this.
Okay.
So that happened. And I do remember the reason I mentioned the Un-American gimmick was because this was still only half a year maybe, or a little bit more, maybe creeping up to a year actually, after 9/11 happened. So anything anti-American was super boo-worthy.
Especially in New York.
And kind of, yeah, right? Especially in something like that. So, and it was also kind of, I wouldn't say popular even outside of WWE to do anything un-American at this point, because it's, you're dredging on some tough ground there. And especially to have the un-Americans go over here is a crazy thing to happen. But that I remember. And then Bubs, Shawn Michaels and Triple H. I remember the build. I remember him coming back. I remember Triple H's turn.
Oh, the turn was
turn
I forgot
was,
all of yes.
That I remember, and then I didn't watch SummerSlam live then, but I did watch it a week later on like a where you rebuy it for like
Yeah,
a cheaper
for like
price.
half the price, like
Yeah, I watched
$20,
it.
you get
Me
the
and some friends did it the next weekend because we pooled money and we were children because we
of
didn't know what
course.
we were doing. But outside of
We're all
that, it's
teenagers.
yeah, it was so long ago that I don't remember all the specifics. But after pulling it back up from top to bottom, loved everything about it, and especially the leadoff. I texted you immediately. I said, "Bubs, this
I
leadoff match.
know.
This is
As I
how."
was watching it the first time, I was sending you text after text like about each match. Like, I can't believe this match starts it.
Yeah,
I can't believe we get this match. Oh
and
my
then this
god, I can't
follows
believe
this. Oh
this
my god!
match. It's like from top to bottom, the card was just stacked. There was no match where you were like, okay, skip. I could skip this one.
Right,
Even the most skippable match was the Undertaker versus Test, and that it's the Undertaker. You're not going to skip that.
right.
So this, from top to bottom, nothing dragged on, nothing went too long, everything fell into place, and by the end of it, you were like, "Is there has to be more? Like, please give me more of this card. It's so good."
Can't end.
No, and the crowd, I can't tell you,
New York crowd, Long Island.
I cannot express enough how fantastic this crowd was from start to finish. Because a lot of times it's not talked about enough, but the crowd makes the show, and that's why the Raw after WrestleMania is such a big deal, and now they make such a big deal about it. But this was a great crowd, and what I mean by that is they cheered who was supposed to be cheered, they booed who was supposed to be booed, and they were live and hot for everything. And because
He
of that,
reacted to everything too.
you're right, 100%. And because of that, it got you invested into it. Now, a lot of that has to do with there was a lot of good stuff happening during this time, but also around this time, the crowd was still. Kayfabe was almost completely dead by this point, but there was still kayfabe there. And so the crowd bought into it. And you had the right stars there to keep the crowd bought into it.
It's not something we see really anymore, and crowds even turning on people and wrestlers at pay-per-views now and going doing their own stuff, hijacking shows. That wasn't a thing at this point, so that's why something like this is so memorable, where you can wait for somebody's music to hit, and the crowd pop is just so loud, and then them counting out the three counts and the ohs for all the kickouts and all that stuff. It's so much more live than what we have now, because we're so spoiled now to knowing everything. Kayfabe's completely gone. We know how matches work.
I hate that. I hate that I know everything that's going to happen. I hate sitting there going, "Oh, he's going to go over because of this," or "Oh, this guy's, he's not going to get pushed, so what's the point?" And I hate feeling that way. That's why sometimes I'll go into this mode where I'll delete all my I'll delete Bleacher Report and all these other apps that give you breakdowns of everything, because then it's like, what's the point of watching when I can just read the breakdown later
Right,
on?
or read the spoiler before it even happens.
Exactly. So this point in time, and this was the best time in wrestling. This 98 through 2002, 2003 time frame was one of the best, I guess, best time frames in wrestling where the crowd was at its peak.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's just made the show so good, and I can't wait. Let's whenever you're ready, I'm ready to
Bubs,
dive
I'm
into
ready to
this
get into
thing.
it, because they jump right into it. We get a quick little nice pyro with the nice SummerSlam stage set up, and then we get Kurt Angle's music.
Yeah,
And
set it up, Bubs.
this was early stages where everyone was now into the "You Suck" edition of his entrance
Thank
music,
you,
and the whole
Edge.
crowd, they all. I mean, Kurt Angle was becoming so over, though, that even though he was booed, they cheered everything he did in the ring because it looked so
Yes.
good. So this was really the ground level of what that becomes later, 2002 through 2006, 7 time frame for Kurt Angle. And you're right, Bubs. We get Rey Mysterio and him starting off a card, Rey's pay-per-view debut, right?
It is, yes. It was his first. He debuted just like 4 months before this, or something like that. A couple months before this, in a match against Chavo on
Mm-hmm.
SmackDown. And yeah, this was his big pay-per-view debut.
I loved it, and Kurt lets him get every bit of work that he can possibly get in. We see all of Rey Mysterio's stuff, and amazing.
What about the
to
starts
see.
of the match, Bubs? You know, Rey
Oh,
Mysterio's music hits, and Kurt's just we're all
where's
just waiting.
Rey?
Where is he? And then he's right behind him and does an amazing, uh, just
It's like a front Hurricane Rana. Yeah.
yes.
From behind him, he taps him on the head. Hurricane Rana's his ass forward, and before you know it, we're off and rolling, and Ray's getting his stuff in.
And
See,
Kurt
that's how you
was that kind of
that whole start
I know.
was just.
That's how you start a pay-per-view, Bubs. That's how you start a show. The crowd's hot. And
Gotta get me into it. I'm ready. You gotta get me going.
And Kurt Angle's the type of athlete that he can keep up with Rey Mysterio at this time.
Right.
You know, Rey Mysterio was quick, high flying, and Kurt Angle can keep up with the speed and can use kind of his power to ground Rey Mysterio and tell that story of the stronger pure wrestler versus the high flying cruiserweight.
Right.
At the time, they were definitely building Mysterio as a cruiserweight. They call him a cruiserweight a few times. Like, wow, I can't believe this cruiserweight's, keeping up with Kurt Angle like this, which I didn't like that part of the commentary. But they were about to start building this cruiserweight division, so I understand. They wanted to make Rey Mysterio a centerpiece of that. But man, for him to get, like you said, for Kurt to give him the offense that he did, that did a world of wonders for Rey Mysterio at the start of his career.
And I loved this stuff when they were working in the ring, and it's not too long of a match. It goes something like 10 minutes, which a lot of the matches did on the card. Kurt uses Ray's speed and high flying against him. Kurt's an amazing counter wrestler, so he can use weight transfer, and he can use the speed that Mysterio creates with his own offense against him, and putting him into power slams, and he does of course German suplexes and all kinds of stuff. A little bit of clashing of styles, but Kurt's still very quick, very fast with what he does, so he's going to keep up with Ray. But this match was so well put together. There's a little bit sloppy, only a couple pieces of that missed.
Just a little bit.
But for probably 8 of the 10 minutes, you're sitting there watching like, this is great back and forth wrestling with both of them getting their stuff in, and it definitely set Rey Mysterio up for the future, because Kurt should go over here as he did.
He's a former world champion. He's a future world champion. He's a main eventer, so it didn't do anything to hurt Rey Mysterio to lose here. Yes, it was his big pay-per-view debut. A lot of times they, especially nowadays, they would put Rey Mysterio up against a jobber of sorts. Maybe if they want that big versus little, they would put Rey Mysterio against like a Titus. Nowadays would be that pay-per-view debut. But to have him debut against a main event level talent like Kurt Angle, and to give him the offense that he got, it did wonders for Rey Mysterio, and I don't think the loss hurt him at all.
Yeah, I loved it, and I'm not sure how far after this Kurt stays within that upper card scene throughout all of his time here in WWE, and for him to lead off a match like this at a SummerSlam, but to put on such a great opening match, it kind of extends Kurt Angle's ability to do anything you want him to do. He can lead off a card, he can go in the middle of the card, he can be at the end of the card, all kinds of stuff. He wins by submission. Loved it. The ankle lock had to be made look strong because he ends up tapping out everybody in his career with it.
But he also he did a good job of working Rey Mysterio's lower body the entire match. Had him in a half Boston Crab for a while. Just kept kind of trying to be methodical. Pick apart body parts. Old school wrestling. Good storytelling is what that is. And so when Mysterio does tap, you're like, okay. He's been worked the entire match.
Yeah, he should tap.
and what led to the finish was one of the few kind of like sloppy moments where they had a good idea in mind for the finish, where Rey Mysterio was going to go for a Hurricanrana, but Kurt was going to grab his leg on the way down, but Rey Mysterio kind of just slipped. But they played it off well.
They fixed it quick.
They did, and it was a solid match. This is about as good of an opening match as I've ever seen for a pay-per-view.
Yeah, this is certainly what you want to get exactly to lead us off with, to get us through the rest of the card. And the card really never slows down. I wouldn't say it maintains the pace of this match, because that's kind of unreasonable to expect with Kurt and Ray. But then we move on, Bubs, and you get to see 53-year-old, I think he is at this
52.
point in time. 52.
Yes.
Okay. 52-year-old Ric Flair and your boy,
Woo!
Y2J.
Why is he my boy?
He should be
pretty sure
everybody's
he's
boy.
all of our boys.
He's the
You always
world's
try to
boy.
throw people onto.
You're right. I'm
onto
sorry.
me like
We
that.
have goat versus goat here.
Yes, the
Yeah, there we
goats.
go. That sounds a little bit better.
That is.
In a little match, a little personal match, heel versus face. Ric Flair at this point in his career, nothing more than a mid-card face is really all he was doing. He was never going to go above or below that anymore. He does go heel after this a little bit as well. Of course, we've talked at lengths about the stable that him and Triple H create, right? So
It's a mystery sometimes.
Yeah,
how that
it is mystery.
But really, the main thing I took away from this match was kind of the offense of Rick became very one-dimensional. He's very chop heavy, just
all chops.
All chops. I think maybe he threw like 2 punches the entire match, but the rest of it were just chops. But the crowd ate it up because you can woo after every chop.
Everyone.
So it didn't really hinder the match at all. Jericho putting him in a figure 4, and the best moment of the match was he's in the figure 4, he's writhing in pain, and Ric Flair's trying to reach for the rope that's right there.
It's like that far from his hand, and he's got so much room to go.
And he goes for the middle rope. It's one of those Flair being Flair kind of moments. I don't know if he knew he was that close to the rope.
He may have been senile already at this point in his career, so it's hard to say.
But this was a good match. It had a little bit of everything. It was never going to be a 5-star affair with those two, especially with an aged Rick. But it had a little bit of everything. Both guys got their offense in, and that's kind of the theme of the night is everyone getting their offense in.
Get your best stuff out there.
Exactly. On a pay-per-view, you're supposed to have evenly matched, opponents, going at it, and both guys get their stuff in, and one guy comes out on top. And depending on how you feel at this time, it could be surprising, or it's like, okay, it's a legend, it's Ric Flair, of course he gets the win.
Sure.
But I thought it was a little surprising that he got Jericho to tap there, but I didn't matter either way. It was a good match, and I think both guys benefited from it.
Yeah, this is only one of 2 matches that I thought could have or should have gone the other way. It's easy to say Ric Flair can get the win here. I do like him winning by figure 4, though. That's a great thing, because Flair, whether he's heel or face, he's always going to cheat. That's him. He's going to do dirty stuff. But to see him not have to use that to get the actual win, to actually make Jericho tap, when Jericho is, working this, he's the king of the world gimmick type thing that he was going with as a dirty heel. And I don't know, you'd think that Jericho's going to continue to get through the rise, because he'd already been undisputed champion at this point, right? So, why should he be slipping down by losing major matches at SummerSlams and stuff like that?
He was a big staple in the mid-card at this point, and for the next half decade.
Yeah. But I liked it. It was a good enough match to watch. I'll watch anything Ric Flair. 90% of his match work was chops, though, which I'm fine with. Jericho's chest was ruined. Good submission stuff. And it's rare. It did really become rare in Rick's WWE career when he came over from WCW to actually see him win a match by figure 4. Doesn't happen a lot.
Right.
And he didn't even win a whole lot, honestly. He lost a hell of a lot more than he ever won. So I love that happened there. It's a good thing to see every now and then, to see one of the most, I guess, successful moves and obviously most successful wrestlers to actually get a match over with something like that. It's a great word to use.
But this was a good match, a notch above serviceable. I think it was, Chris Jericho and Ric Flair. You can't go wrong with either of those two.
No.
But I think the next match, though, definitely blew that match out of the water, and we switch over to SmackDown here.
Yeah,
where,
good turn.
Yeah, Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit had just recently been switched over to SmackDown. This is where the whole SmackDown 6 started, was with these guys. So you had Eddie Guerrero going up against Edge in a feud where Eddie Guerrero is jealous of Edge's sex appeal and his placing within the company. So that was kind of the catalyst to the feud, and that's not even the worst feud that Edge had been a part of. Worst reason for Edge to feud with someone, because remember, he feuded with Booker T over a shampoo commercial, like a Japanese shampoo commercial. So not the worst reason to feud.
Right.
Eddie Guerrero to be jealous of Edge's sex appeal, but you have two of the best, in-ring workers. You can't go. Both of these guys are so good, Bubs. Like, I'm at a loss for words for just the importance of both of these guys in the future of the company. Not at this point. Edge has been a single star for about a year or more.
Right, he's on his rise right here. This is a great part of his young career.
He had already won King of the Ring. He beat Kurt Angle in a feud that led to a hair versus hair match.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of those things. We've talked about this before with hair versus hair matches. You always know who it's going to be that loses. Like, there was no way Kurt Angle was going to beat Edge in a hair versus hair match. But both of these guys, future world champions, future Edge, an 11-time world champion, Eddie, winning the one time, but who knows, if things are different in the future, how many more he may have won. But what do you think about this match, Bubs?
This feud was almost pointless. They just had to create a feud, heel versus face, to get them both onto the card. So I could care less really what the story was trying to tell. And I do remember something about Eddie was claiming that he'd never been hit or never been beat with the spear.
Yes, he had never,
or something like that.
Never been speared.
Never been speared, right? It was something to that effect. And in a match like this, where Edge is just on this rise in a SummerSlam, he has to win. I'm glad he won this one. I wouldn't have liked it if Eddie had gone over in this one. The match was very nice, though. And Edge's Impaler DDT is something that I think that they should have protected a lot more throughout his career, because he used it a lot when he was in the Brood in the late 90s and things like that, before the spear, right, before the spear became a more protected thing, I guess. But because the crowd was super into it, and I think they expected Eddie to stay down when he got hit by it. That just ran through my head, because I remember using that move as like a finisher on all the creative wrestlers and stuff, because I just loved the way it looks.
It was a good finisher, and
loved it.
That looked way better than Edge's spear. Edge never had the best looking spear. And so, the execution was a really cool move. And like you said, it's something that, in video games it looked great.
Yeah.
But, this match these guys had a long kind of storied rivalry with each other. Had a lot of good matches together. Eddie. Excuse me.
Which one?
Yeah. Eddie Guerrero was a, notoriously kind of hard kind of hitter. And, kind of led to some of Edge's neck troubles. I remember one match that they had, Eddie hit this sunset flip powerbomb on Edge that just, it looked brutal in that. But these two never put on a bad match together. And because of that, this match was, surprise, surprise, a really good match.
Yep. I really liked it. It was fun. We got to see, again, another version like we're going to hear throughout all of this is everyone gets their work in. We get to see some frog splashes, or at least attempts at the frog splash from Eddie, and a little bit of a longer one. This was longer than the Kurt one, I think, the match itself. It didn't necessarily drag on, but
what about
it was good.
Frog splash on, because Eddie was working the arm and shoulder of Edge, and Edge sold it really well, and then that frog splash on the arm was that was a fun little bit of storytelling there.
Right. The whole selling of the shoulder thing was the best part of the match for sure, because as a heel, that's something you want to see done, is isolation of a body part, and they chose the shoulder in this instance. And even for him to hit a frog splash on Edge's outstretched arm, kind of basically what it became, and then Edge was supposed to sell it a little bit better. I think had he sold that a little better as he hit it, it would have gotten the crowd into it more, but it's such a good thing. And then you see Edge, he keeps fighting through it. He's getting beat up and they're isolating a body part, but he keeps fighting and he's got all this perseverance. And the announcers were just talking him up.
Yes.
Because the more Eddie isolated it, I know, the more Eddie went against it, the more Edge recovered. And, at the end, he's still holding it. He's holding it down. But, man, perseverance from this young kid
he even hits
right
the
here.
Spear with the bad arm, which I thought was probably just because that's his main arm.
That's probably how he does it, yeah.
So I think if he uses the other arm for the spear and gets the win that way, would have been better. I think if he hits the spear with the bad arm like he did, and Eddie kicks out because it was hit with the bad arm, I think that would have been a fun little bit of storytelling to add in there. But all in all, it was a good match, good to great match, and man, just that's the whole theme of this show was just that each match was enthralling, great storytelling throughout the entire show, and even the mid card, because nowadays everything's so formulaic. You don't get a lot of good storytelling like that now, and that's why the crowd was so into it. And you had the announcers, and the announcers are able to sell it because the announcers are also telling the story for the people that aren't there. So the storytelling in the ring is for the people that are in the audience, and then the announcers are the ones telling the story to us watching it. And this era, that was everything just kind of came together.
I want to talk about the Un-Americans a little bit, Bubs, as we move on.
Okay.
So, and what I mean is, good little group, right? Christian, Lance Storm, Test, I think William Regal maybe at some point. I don't know if that came to fruition.
Maybe in the future.
Maybe. I don't know, but Canadian-based, right? Un-Americans for the most part.
Yes.
And I think that if they really wanted this to get off the ground a little bit more, you got to put somebody in it who's a little more relevant than a mid-carder. Because Test had the potential string always attached to him, but he was never above that.
No, he never worked past that.
Christian eventually goes on to higher things, years down the road. Lance Storm was never anything better than...
Edge was always the guy of that group, and Lance Storm, labeled as boring, and rightfully so.
Technical master, but leave him in the mid-card, and that's where he was. So I think that there was a lot more potential that this could have had, especially as an extremely heel character gimmick, that they could have added somebody that was up in that, towards the upper card or something, just to give it more... I don't know. I had no names really ready. I'm just thinking, that's almost too much, I would think.
Also in the mid-cards at this point. So
right, but he is Chris Jericho.
True.
I don't know. As I was listening to their promo when they were cutting it backstage, the three of them, I'm like, I want to pay attention to these words, but you're Christian, Lance Storm, and Test. I like all you guys. You're fun to watch. You're a great technician, Lance Storm, but I don't want to hear you cut a promo.
No.
And
Christian was, he's decorated. Multi-time tag team champion. Never the best on the mic.
No.
Edge was always way better on the mic than Christian. And that's the poor thing about Christian is that he was always in that shadow, in that Edge shadow. He was always going to be compared to Edge. And because of that, we always see his flaws a lot more than we would someone else, because it's, okay, he just cut this promo, but if Edge cut this promo, that would be a little better. Or, that was an okay match, but imagine if Edge was in that match instead of Christian. So it kind of sucks for him because his entire career was predicated on that, except for his run in TNA. So I get what you're saying, but it's kind of because we did that to him.
Exactly. Had he not had Edge by his side, he would have never had a career. But the fact that he had Edge next to him kind of gave him the career that he had. And Christian should be one of them Hall of Fame guys, I think, just because of what he did in the tag team world. But
he's a world champion.
He was a world champion. They hooked him up with that. You stay in the company long enough, they'll give you one to Mark Henry too. But sorry. So I like the match. So I like the match here too, Bubs. You and I are big into Goldie and Booker T. This is great times for them right here.
One of the best pairings of random people of all
just
time.
Worked. And I kind of want to know, I want to work backwards on this one a little bit. Why not, considering how hot the crowd was, for both teams. Big booing on the Un-Americans. Why not have Booker and Goldust go over here? Big pop if they win. Huge pop.
It is a big pop if they win. I mean, I feel like maybe they had, they had more plans with the Un-Americans. It was kind of taking off. Like you said, it was about a year away. A year prior was 9/11, this huge tragedy. And to have the foreign gimmick is always going to be something that WWE pushes. It's an easy thing to get heat, heel heat on. So they probably had, much bigger plans for the Un-Americans. Maybe they had someone in mind that they were going to add to the stable, like you said, that teetering main event guy that could push them over the top, because stables were a big deal back in the day. So, having them win, I'm not against having them win. It would have been a huge pop if Booker T, Goldust win the tag team titles, but when you have a night filled with title changes and the face going over, you've got to have those matches where the heels
we need balance. I get that,
and that's how I see that match came about. The ending of that match came about.
Okay, I really like the match because everything that was told, the story that was told, Goldust was isolated for about 80% of the match. We're waiting for a hot tag for Booker. He can't get it twice. Loved it. Booker finally gets it, and he just goes off on some folks, and he has his way. We get some more back and forth stuff. I love the interference. If they're going to do it that way, bring in Test. Test is that out. He's the powerhouse of the group. He's the guy that's going to do things for you. His running big boot is a top all time for me. So
not so much
I loved it absolutely. So
you're a big Test fan.
I was waiting for that pop to happen.
And I'm glad that Test was here, because I've been wanting to ask you this. Why all the Test love?
Man, I wish I knew the exact answer, Bubs. I do. I don't know. When I looked at him, and when I was probably told by JR when I was young, this kid's got a bunch of potential. Look at him. He goes 6'7". He's an athletic freak. Plus, he used the pump handle slam and a running big boot. So for a kid who was all about moves at the time, Bubs, in this young teenage years of mine,
yes,
I was all about it. And because he was never really a champion at anything, I'm like, that's going to be my guy. He's eventually going to be champion.
Okay, that
I
makes
was
sense.
I was going to tell people I've been with him since day one-ish, and I rode him all the way to the top. But the top never came.
That's true.
So
and
I
understand that point, because I've had those guys. RVD was one of those guys for me. Jeff Hardy. I'm going to ride these guys to the top. I've been lucky enough to have my guys like Edge, get to the top. But I completely see where you're coming from with the Test love. But I never saw it. I get it. He's big. He's got a great look. The pump handle slam is a cool move when it's pulled off properly. Snitsky did a lot of that back in 2006, 2007 time frame.
Test was able to pump handle slam the Undertaker, and he did it to Rikishi. So I think
that is impressive.
Those are impressive feats.
But he can't cut a promo.
No.
His matches weren't good. I mean, there was a lot against them, working against them. But
I know.
Talking about old school kind of tag team wrestling here, like you said, Goldie was cut off a lot for about 85-90% of the match. Booker T did get a tag, but the ref didn't see it.
He didn't see it.
It's like, get out. Get out of here.
Poor Goldie. And they double team him back into the corner. Boo.
And the crowd's just eagerly awaiting.
Booker T.
Booker. So many Booker T chants, Bubs.
Talk about a guy being over.
Yes, he gets in, hits a double scissor kick.
On both of them. Loved it.
Yes. Spin-a-Rooney, And the ref taking bumps all over the place.
Love a good ref bump.
He gets hit with the heel kick, spinning heel kick by Lance Storm.
Storm, yeah.
Test comes in, hits the big boot. 1, 2, 3.
Count it up. Protected move.
It is. And the Un-Americans retain, unsurprisingly, for me. Goldie and Booker did win the titles, right?
I do think I was going to ask you that, because I remember them being champions individually, obviously, but this time frame was when they were together, so that's going to deserve
I
A
remember.
goober grill.
Do you remember the whole Goldust being electrocuted angle?
Gold dust being electrocuted.
Yes,
Hmm.
that lasted for a little while where he got electrocuted and then he started
Okay.
stuttering a lot because of it. Like he would just randomly spaz out because he was electrocuted. You don't remember
One
that?
one-time champions.
Yes, they did win.
They did
Good,
win once.
good.
The only electrocution thing I recall was Shane McMahon, so
Oh,
I
and his
don't
testicles.
recall
Yes.
Goldie. But that sounds hilarious. That sounds like
It
a TV
was.
I'd watch.
It was good. It was on Raw back when I was deep into Raw, Bubs, before I got into SmackDown. So, God, that's what I remember. One of the
Yeah.
things I remember most about Goldust and Booker T in their pairing.
Gold Dust will never be recognized for how truly great he is and was.
Oh,
He won't.
a
He
top
will
three gimmick of all time.
of all time
Of all time.
in wrestling.
Undertaker,
He
Goldust,
competes with
Kane.
me
You know, one of the
for the Undertaker gimmick. He's right there, one A, number
one.
two maybe.
I wouldn't put him at 1A. Definitely 2. It would be, or
Okay,
maybe 3 because you have Undertaker, Kane,
I put him
and
above
then
Kane.
you put him above Kane.
I do.
Okay,
But those are the three, right? So
yeah.
those other two, fuck, they're the dudes, right?
Oh
All
yeah.
over the place. Hall of Fames. We're talking multiple championships, world titles, Rumble wins, WrestleMania main events. Goldie, not so much. Is it because his character has held him back? Yes.
Absolutely,
You can't put that
100%.
character
You
main
can't.
eventing anything.
No, but because of the character is what's kept him relevant and in the picture for so long.
Right, but the picture's only so big for him. It extends
Oh,
to match
exactly. It's
7 on the
IC
card,
title.
not
Its
10.
IC title is his limit, and he was a
Yeah,
multi-time IC champion. But and a multi-time tag team champion. But that's as far as that character
trash.
can take you.
During the era when they were handing out world title reigns to Christian and Mark Henry, Goldust should have sure as hell
No,
held one as well.
hell no,
So
absolutely not.
that's complete
I,
bullshit.
you're right. That is complete bullshit.
Yeah,
That Goldust would get a world title run.
okay.
It,
But Christian deserves it. You're right.
yes,
Okay.
yes, I do
Now you're
agree
talking
with
out of
that.
your ass.
But I'm not. But listen, I'm not saying that I'm a huge fan of Christian. You know, I'm not a big fan of
Okay.
Christian. But he is way more deserving of a world title run than a Goldust. Maybe Dustin Rhodes,
Okay,
Dustin Runnels can be a world champion, but
that's
not
fine. I don't
Goldust.
care if they take the gimmick off of him. You know damn well the roads behind the paint deserves to have held a
I'm
world title.
talking about the character Goldust. Period.
Okay,
I'm not talking about the man himself. The man himself should have been a WCW champion back in the day.
sure. Christian was as boring as he could have been as a
Yes,
world heavyweight champion. Thank God Randy
absolutely.
took it from him quickly.
Quick. Well, the only reason he won the world championship is because Edge retired. That's
Ugh.
it. But it was more. It's more believable for him to be world champion for the month that he was world champion
Month
than
too long.
I'm not going to argue that point with you. I'm
Okay,
not here to tell you that Christian is a surefire first ballot Hall of Famer.
because
Goldust
he hasn't
is.
been. Goldie is.
Goldust
Thank
is.
you. Sure.
But the character does not lend itself to being a world champion. Would you stop making stupid faces?
Look, you got me hot. You got me over here,
Yeah, you are.
mad. We're gonna move
What's
on. Big
next?
fan of Rob Van Dam, Bubs. Long
Yes, I
match
am.
here.
Yes, I am.
Long match. Benoit defending his IC title against Van Dam. Loved it.
Yes, the winner of this match takes the IC title to their respective shows.
Go to your show with it. Bring it
Yes.
over.
Stephanie
And
and Bischoff.
yeah, I was gonna mention that as well. That's when we see them in the back they're sitting in the same
It's really
GM
weird
office,
sexual tension
bickering.
going on between
Wait,
these two.
it's odd. It's uncomfortable. I
Creepy.
hated it. The cutscenes are
Bischoff
weird.
is so
Stephanie was not a
creepy.
good actress. I don't know. The match though. I love
Hmm.
Benoit. He really works down
Yes.
Van Dam in this match quite a bit. And the ending was nice because you didn't necessarily think that Van Dam was going to hit his 5-star not so quickly because the match was long at this point, but he just he knocks down, he counters a suplex off the top rope, and
Yep.
we get into a 5-star where he turns his body, and that's just one of the best
Ooh.
moves ever.
He
That
was
is
so
why
athletic. He was such a
my
freak.
that's why my recent Follow Friday post had everybody commenting their favorite top rope finisher or signature move, and I
The
put up
five
there
star.
the 5-star one. It happened to be where he missed it, but it was a great looking 5-star. Regal rolls out of the way.
He puts so much torque, and it's weird to say. That's a weird thing to say. Like, he put a lot of torque into a top rope move, but the impact that Rob Van Dam would get or would make you feel when he hit the 5-star frog splash, because he would sell that it hurt. It hurt him.
He was more hurt. Yeah.
And to me it's the best frog splash. Eddie's was more, I guess. I don't know what the right word to say about Eddie's was.
It was very quick, and it happened fast. The limited impact, because he doesn't have the body frame necessarily to support a move like that you'd want to see, but it's just differently. It's hit differently from Van Dam, because Van Dam launches himself straight up first, it seems like.
And then he shoots himself straight up after he lands. He goes flying through the air after he lands it.
I really enjoyed this match for the match work. This one was almost right up there with the entertainment value that I got out of Kurt and Rey Mysterio from the beginning, because I love watching Benoit do his technical stuff, especially to beat down a guy like a Van Dam, where Van Dam's he was so good as a face. Never liked the heel Van Dam. Never liked an ECW version of Rob Van Dam. So to see these two clashing, to see Benoit continuing to keep Van Dam down, he keeps coming back. He even uses the crossface on Benoit, which a lot of people used against Benoit to get a nice pop. I always like that when people counter different submission moves. It's nice to see. But Van Dam's educated feet, Bubs. Love that line.
Educated feet.
Love that line.
Rob Van Dam from Battle Creek, Michigan.
I am, and oh my God, you're making my next point for me real quick, Bubs. So that? Real quick, let's have this. It's a little bit of a sidebar, so I'm sorry if it's going to take us off point for a second. But think about how
we never do sidebars.
You're right. We don't get lost. Well, we're about to get lost. So you know how much useless information guys like you and I have, or wrestling fans that know things about wrestling that are just irrelevant. So as everybody came out, the second time I rewatched SummerSlam, I was calling out all of their places where they're billed to be from, all their places where they were born, right? And even most of their weights I've known for the majority of their career if they didn't change them when the announcers let them out, right? You could, if I named off 10 wrestlers right now, you could probably get 8 of them and tell me where their build location was from when they're announced.
Most
you know
likely,
how fucking useless that is?
It's absolutely useless. There's no reason to know any of that information. No. Like, why do I need to know that, Chris Benoit, born in insert this Canadian
Montreal.
He was born in Montreal, yes.
But he's built from Edmonton.
But he's now residing in Atlanta, Georgia.
In Atlanta.
Bubs. So
let's go through the card real quick, Bubs. All right, Kurt Angle, go. Where's Kurt Angle from?
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
All right, Ric Flair.
Ric Flair is from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Chris Jericho.
Chris Jericho is from Edmonton, Manitoba, Canada.
Oh, he's from Winnipeg,
you idiot. That's what I... Go back to Toronto.
Oh, I'm from Winnipeg. Eddie Guerrero.
Eddie Guerrero, El Paso, Texas.
El Paso, Texas. Yes. That's right. Booker T.
Booker T is from Houston, Texas.
From Houston, Texas. Rob Van Dam.
Battle Creek, Michigan.
Biker Undertaker.
Oh, that was Houston, Texas also.
Houston, Texas. Yes. Good. Shawn Michaels.
Oh, San Antonio, Texas.
San Antonio. Brock Lesnar.
Oh, hold on.
Say it.
What, Minnesota?
There you go. Which city?
Nah, not Minneapolis.
Minneapolis, Bubs.
It was Minneapolis. Okay.
Minneapolis. And The Rock.
The Rock is from Miami, Florida, Bubs.
Useless information that we just happen to know. Like almost anybody that you think of, I always somehow it just jumps in my head like what it sounds like to hear them being announced.
Yes.
And where they're from and their build weight. The Undertaker coming out at 326 and
I was going to say 326
and Jim Ross telling me he's 6'10" and a half and I'm like that's useless for me. So I had to get it out, Bubs. I wanted to make it a topic because as wrestling fans, we pay attention to some obscure shit. Yes. It doesn't matter where people are from.
No,
it really doesn't. But it adds a value when they're wrestling in their hometown, wrestling in their home state. Yes. That's when a lot of that stuff comes out. But over the years, we've seen 200 or plus different
How
wrestlers.
many wrestlers are 225 pounds, Bubs?
I don't know.
Literally dozens hover around that 225 pound mark. Chris
Yeah.
Jericho,
Hmm.
225 pounds. I'm sure Chris Benoit, 225 pounds.
Yeah.
I always loved the arbitrary numbers that WWE would attach to these guys.
229.
229, 300, 320,
Yeah.
326 for the Undertaker. I don't know where they got
We weighed in that
that
today.
number. Yeah, they weigh him in that day. Okay, he got to the arena. Here's the scale. Let's go ahead
Yep.
and step on it. Uh, it's unfortunate that they never had a scale big enough for Crash Holly
Ever.
ever, because he
It
was
never.
because that's the thing. The scales probably went up to 400 pounds, but
Well over that.
he
Yeah.
it would just keep spinning
Yeah.
when he got on it. So he was
And
well over. Buzz, we're sidebarring hard
we are.
right now.
And well, I'll end it with this. Which idiot actually believed that the Big Show was 500 plus? I did when I was little.
Absolutely, he was 7
I,
feet tall, 500 pounds.
500 pounds when he was probably in the low fours, maybe high threes.
Well,
But I
there was
bought
a
it.
couple moments in his career where you were like,
Yeah.
yeah, that dude's
No, I believe that.
500 pounds.
He's floating 500 easy. Sorry, Bubs. We got through that, though. Benoit, he loses his title here.
He does, because the
big
Intercontinental title belongs on Raw, Bubs. The IC title is a Raw staple.
Sure. Okay.
And because
And
of that, we get the U.S. title. Ooh, everyone
do.
loves the U.S. title, right?
Well, it doesn't do well.
It doesn't. It really doesn't, ever.
We do get it because we have to create this equality across brands, which is okay. But the U.S. title, not what it was back in its heyday. It's been held by everybody.
To me, the greatest WWE U.S. champion of all time from multiple reigns.
John Bradshaw Layfield.
No, the other John. John Cena, Bubs.
No.
Bubs. His
No.
2015 run with the U.S. Open Challenge was phenomenal. Yep. When he took the title off of the Big Show at WrestleMania 20, that was a good run. Led to his WWE Championship.
Okay.
I mean, in my opinion, John Cena, one of the best WWE U.S. champion of all time. Other than, you know where I'm going with this.
Where are you going with it? Do I have to hear it?
Santino Marella.
God. Remember when they pulled him out of the crowd, Bub?
Yes.
When he debuted?
Raise your hand if you believe that he was really Italian and pulled out of the crowd.
I hear. Hands up really high until he took his shirt off and he was yoked.
Oh,
and
yoked
had
out of his mind.
An amazing back tattoo and all kinds of crap. And I'm like, I don't know. Is he Italian?
Super Canadian.
I think he's pretty Canadian.
He's very Canadian.
But and then he beats Umaga, but
he did with Bobby Lashley's help. And Lashley was way more over than I remember. Because I went back and watched some older Raws, and Lashley was a little more over than I remember him being. He wasn't over with this guy, but he was over with the crowd.
Bubs, anything else to say on the Benoit Van Dam match? Good ending.
We're talking SummerSlam 2002.
We've gone away from the match. I've hit my points on that one, though.
Yes. I really don't have much to add. It was another good match, great match.
Yep, sure was.
Two really good in-ring workers. Of course, you're going to have a good match out of it. It's hard to keep talking about all these matches, and because they were all just really good. It was solid from top to bottom. I'm going to say this the entire time.
Mm-hmm. And even this next match, this would have to be your lowest ranked match for the card, but you're still going to watch it because it gets pretty good. It's nice to see that Test gets the ability to put his work in on a guy like The Undertaker.
Yes, you're right.
Because there were people that were trying to push the guy, and they put him in a stable, and he's somewhat leading the stable, being the big man, and he draws The Undertaker at a SummerSlam, Bubs. That's a pretty big thing. And the match was okay. It wasn't longer than it should have been. It wasn't too short. Definitely serviceable. We saw some nice stuff.
Excuse me.
Get your shit together over there.
This
match was really set up so the Undertaker could wave an American flag at the end of it,
Yes.
get people feeling pretty good, get him over the Un-Americans winning 2 matches prior, to get Test some love, but ultimately, let's see the chokeslam, let's see the tombstone instead of the last ride.
A really good
And
tombstone. I
a nice
like
tombstone.
that.
He didn't want a last ride Test. Would have liked to have seen that. But I like the
That
match
would
for what
hurt
it
the
was.
back. I assume
Yeah, it's a
someone
big
as big
big
as
dude to put up
Test.
there, but he's done it to
Yeah.
Rikishi. I don't know.
True.
So
Maybe it's a
I
height thing.
I didn't like I didn't love
Can't
the match.
teach
I'll say,
that.
but is we going to talk about that in a second?
Moving on.
What'd you like about the match though, Bubs? Anything of note?
Like I've said before, Undertaker, he's kind of got a reputation of being able to get kind of the best out of some of the bigger guys than you typically would see out of them. I mean, other than Giant Gonzalez, Undertaker has been able to get.
Wasn't meant to be.
It wasn't meant to be. People that hover around that 6'7" and taller frame, Undertaker does a pretty good job of getting the best out of them. He did it with Psycho Sid. I've mentioned this before.
Garbage.
He did it with Kevin Nash or Diesel back in the day. And he did it here with Test. I don't think the outcome was ever in question. I don't know if you ever thought watching that match that Test might pull this out, because I never did. Once. No. But, talking about what I mentioned before with having the Un-Americans win and retain their tag team titles, this was you have all these matches where you're popping the crowd with all these face wins that, that's why you have the Un-Americans retain, because there's so many good guys winning and so much goodwill. There you
go.
Yeah, I put some E's in there. You're stupid. That it balances the card out. So Undertaker wins, goes into the crowd, gets an American flag, waves it around. The crowd's going to be hot for that and pop for that. That's the entire reason for this match.
It's to get them excited for the next thing that's about to be huge, I think. It's to get them over any mediocrity they could be feeling, because they need the crowd to be pumped for Shawn Michaels' music, which is about to hit, and all of his pyro.
Yes. Lots of pyro for Shawn Michaels. Before we jump into that, Undertaker Test, serviceable. That's what I give it. Do you give it anything more than that?
No, serviceable is a good word. I would watch it again even just because I liked the way that they meshed together. It was nice. Okay.
But yes, the next match, Bubs, and it got the best hype package of all the matches. It got the best build of all the matches on this card. And from start to finish, it was would you say this was the hottest crowd for the entire show? Like, this match had the crowd in its hands from start to finish.
Certainly for that, but the ending of Brock and Rock had them probably just as loud for a shorter moment.
Right. You're right.
But
yes.
we have
from start
talked
to finish,
about...
I'm talking about the entirety of the match.
They were hot for this one because of the story. The story should have been better than the match. However, the match became better than the story, I think, because it was so good. This was... I don't know how long it was. It had to be 30 minutes.
It was the longest match by far of the entire show.
Sure.
It was 40 minutes, Bubs.
No, it wasn't that long.
It was a long match. Start talking, I'm going to look it up.
Good. It was near that 30-minute mark. Had to be. So, we've talked about this one before, because this was one of your top 3 matches of all time. We have done that podcast. We have done this match. We both marked for it because the story leading into it and the story that we expected to come during it was supposed to be 5-star greatness worthy, and that's exactly what it was.
It was.
So when I was 12, I remember, the feud. I remember Triple H turning. I remember, being all over Shawn Michaels' side and being, anti-Triple H as I was for a lot of my career, as I am now.
Minutes.
28 minutes, dear God.
That's a long
Pretty
match.
long, yep.
Especially for a guy that had been out of wrestling for 4 years.
He could have gone another 30 minutes.
He could have.
It was that
Shawn Michaels.
That good. And I loved how, of course, they make it unsanctioned. That adds this little nuance, right, to it that well, whatever they do, we're not financially responsible. They've both had to sign waivers saying that the WWE is not held responsible for anything,
Yes, but
which
there's
is
so much animosity between these two that they want to rip each other's throat. Triple H multiple times said he's going to cripple Shawn
yeah, he's gonna
Michaels.
wheelchair his ass, right? Yeah,
That's a little foreshadowing there, a little bit of foreshadowing.
I liked it. But Bubs, this match is great, right? It's one of those great matches that Shawn has had, that Triple H has had, that's been ever done in the WWE. This is one of those. The ending, we talked about this before. I think I asked you specifically when we did the top three matches. Were you okay with a roll up victory for Shawn Michaels, or would you have rather had him hit that sweet chin music at the end and put a little stamp on this thing?
If you listen to the crowd, Bubs, when he goes for that sweet chin music in the final sequence, the crowd they want it to happen. They
Mm-hmm.
even make the noise like as soon as his Triple H grabs his foot, you hear everyone go, "Yeah!" Oh, and he puts him in the pedigree position, and they're just like, "Ah!" But then he
Damn it.
counters. He counters into the roll up, and the crowd gets hot for it. I think the roll up, in retrospect, now that I've watched it, 3 or 4 times leading in the lead
Mm-hmm.
up to this show, that I think it was the right finish. Yes, having him hit the sweet chin music would have just sent your nostalgia boner to the moon,
Right.
and everyone would have been hot for it. But having that roll up happen, it keeps everyone strong. No one has to
Yep.
put any finishing move over, and this was always supposed to be a one-off match for Shawn Michaels. This was supposed to be the can he still do it, and if he
Mm-hmm.
can still do it, then we can maybe talk future with him. So you can't have Triple H just go down to the sweet chin music if this is going to be Shawn Michaels' final match. Of course, he has the match. It's a fantastic match. They go backstage, and he's like, "Hey, I think I can do this. I think I
Yeah.
can come back and do this." But you can't have Triple H lose to someone who's just going to ride off into the sunset with it, with that guy's finishing move.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to hurt your top guy. Triple H is the top guy, in the
Yeah.
entire company. And you have your brand split. Triple H is going to be the guy on Raw. So I think having him win the way that he did was the right move.
Okay. And we eventually, this of course leads down the road to the Elimination Chamber, and we get to see Shawn Michaels reestablishing himself as a top guy, winning a
Yeah.
title. So to see a
His last
jackknife roll
title.
up,
His very
yeah,
last title.
a jackknife roll up, it threw that extra bit of unknown into the crowd at the end, because we had them ready to hit the sweet chin music. It gets countered. We get a pedigree. Oh, but wait, we get another roll up. It just kept playing with the emotions, which I really liked, all the way down
Which
to
you
the
saw a lot
end.
of in the main event, which we'll get
Sure,
into.
right. That one had some counters too.
Yeah.
So there's just so much about this match, Bubs.
Yeah.
Thankfully, we have talked about it before, so we don't have to go into the
Well,
details.
I'm
But
going to go ahead and go into the details.
I'm sure
glad
you are. I'm
brought
sure you
that
have
up.
some, as do I.
So, because I know that with the main event, I'm just going to let you take that one and kind of run
Oh,
with it, because that's The Rock's your guy. So
okay,
that was, you're very hyped for the main event.
okay,
This is my main event for SummerSlam. So you have to remember what makes this match so important, and what makes it kind of a tick better than what it would have been maybe if this match took place 2 or 3 years later, is that this is the return of Shawn Michaels. He hasn't wrestled in 4 years. Technically, he hasn't wrestled in WWE for 4 years. You can find a video of him, on the indie scene that really
it's not
trash.
worth it.
It's not, but it's his big return. It's his one-off match. So for him to be able to do the things that he does in this match, the table spot that they have, uh,
Loved it.
the selling that he did, the everything about this match made you go, this guy's coming back, right? Like, this can't be his one and only. Like, has he lost a step? There were a couple moments where you're like, yeah, there's some rust kind of coming off, but you watch it and you're just like, this is the same Shawn Michaels I remember watching 4 years ago. This is the same Shawn Michaels that was running the main event, 5 years ago. And just everything came together and created this beautiful imagery. Just what a story that was told. Two former best friends, now bitter rivals. One wants to cripple the other. The other wants to kind of bring the other back from the dark side. And it just led to a beautiful painting being
Painted.
I know. A beautiful picture being painted in the ring by two of the best of all time to ever be in-ring technicians. And it just, from start to finish, everything, all the colors matched perfectly. All the paint strokes were masterfully done. And just I see the faces that you're making. But
You're so extra with it. I love it.
I know, but there's a reason this match is on my top 3 matches of all time.
Okay.
And the extra bit of storytelling that took place after the match happened, with Triple H taking a sledgehammer, and whew, those sledgehammer shots looked stiff.
Nice and deep and real in there on that lower back.
I remember a 12-year-old, 13-year-old me being very upset about this happening.
Damn it, Triple H.
I hated Triple H already, but this is what took me to the next level of my hate for Triple H, and I watched Raw every single week after this just to see Triple H get his comeuppance.
Bubs, the best part of this entire match, of all the crap that you just mentioned...
It's not crap.
It's not. But the best part is the isolation of Shawn's lower back.
Yes.
That's the absolute best part of this match, because he takes several moves to the lower back. He takes chair shots when he was caught up in the grapevine.
Slams.
He takes a backbreaker sidewalk slam through the seat of a chair. And then after all that, right, we get through a point, and then he kips up and he's dancing around the ring, and the fucking arena is exploding with the love. It's craziness of how he can hold you in the palm of his hand, and how this match allowed him to get to that point. And even it shows at the end, of course, with him winning, how excited everyone was to see it. So the story is one thing that led into it, but the continued efforts of Triple H to try to cripple him and put him in that wheelchair in the match itself for 30 minutes made me go, damn, this shit's really good.
It's so good. And that led to their prolonged feud over the World Heavyweight Championship, which lasted for close to a year.
It was a good feud.
It was so good. And go back and listen to our episode on our top 3 favorite matches of all time to hear more about... Hear me mark out more about this match. I've already talked a lot about it. There's not much more I can say other than just it was a masterpiece.
Chris Masters?
No.
Oh no.
He was. You want to talk about potential people we thought had potential, Bubs? That was a guy that...
Well, we've been wrong before, because 6 months ago we're like, yeah, Big Cass is going to be
literally
headlining
on this show talked about main event WrestleMania 2019, Big Cass
versus Drew McIntyre. We called it.
We did, and we were so dumb.
We sat here a year ago or something, and we agreed that within 2 to 3 to 4 years, Cass is going to main event WrestleMania.
And he was going to be the guy.
He was going to be the guy.
He was going to be everything that Test wasn't.
Yeah. Bub, sometimes we just got to say we were wrong, but
and we
were
wrong.
How important is the WWE system, though, Bubs?
Bubs, I sent you that picture, and you've seen it, but and I'm sure everyone listening to this has seen this picture circulating already of Cass at his 90-day no compete is done, and he spent those 90 days getting into some kind of shape, but it's not.
Yeah, it's a more round shape than anything.
He has done the opposite of what Drew McIntyre did when Drew McIntyre left WWE. Complete opposite. Drew McIntyre said, "Yeah, I fucked up in WWE. I'm gonna make the most of this."
I'm gonna go be an amazing champion now.
Yeah, and Cass has done the complete
Ah,
opposite.
and he used to slay Carmella.
He did.
Well,
Now
back in the
Ellsworth
day.
is no,
No,
he's
he's
not. Absolutely not. That
Bubs.
toothless.
Bubs,
Anyway,
main
yes,
event time.
Bubs, main event.
Main event SummerSlam 2002. We've
What a
got the
main
Undisputed
event.
Championship. What a way to cap the night, because you just saw one of the greatest matches of all time. Now you got to defend
Yes.
your big title. And in cases like this match can get lost because you just see something huge go on right beforehand that can easily outdo or be bigger than your world title or your WWE Championship or your Undisputed.
WrestleMania, what was it? 19? Rockin'
Rockin'
Hogan
Hogan at 18.
completely ruining Chris Jericho and
Yeah,
Triple H.
Triple H. Yep.
So,
He had no shot. Here's another example of what that could have been, but it didn't happen like that because a couple reasons. Because one, Brock really was the next big thing. He has ascended so quick since he debuted. He won King of the Ring before this. The Rock, who had been the People's Champion for a good while, his face run was very well established now in 2002. He was going to go off to Hollywood for a good amount of time for a hiatus.
Yes.
And kayfabe was done, so we all knew about it. The internet had told us. Magazines had told us. So now the smart fan is going to start to boo The Rock, even though he's still a face, technically. So with all that outside stuff lingering, we have The Rock defending the Undisputed Championship against Brock Lesnar with Paul Heyman.
Yes, and Brock Lesnar earned this spot by winning King of the Ring, like you mentioned, and The Rock had just won the title.
Just wanted a vengeance. That's right. Good match, by the way.
What was it? A triple threat with him,
Triple threat
Undertaker,
match.
and Kurt Angle.
Mhm.
So the writing was on the wall. The Rock was leaving for Hollywood, and yes, he was the face. He was The Rock. He was the great one. He was the people's champ. Everything you can say about him, but wrestling fans are kind of petty. If you're gonna leave us, we're not gonna take that too kindly.
No, we're gonna get upset, and we're gonna even tell you about it because we have opinions and stuff like that. That happens all the time, and I'm kind of curious. I want to talk about this because it seemed like everything was set up to get Brock into the right place, right?
Yes.
So, a month before this, at Vengeance, The Undertaker was the Undisputed Champion. Now,
Which was
is there
a great
a reason?
run. I love the Undertaker Undisputed Championship run.
It was very good. Now, I want to kind of put it in this perspective. Why could they not have made The Undertaker still champion here and have Brock beat him clean? Is that not a believable thing? Or was The Rock really that much of a bigger star, because I think he was, than The Undertaker? So it means more to have a Brock go over Rock than Brock going over The Undertaker for this championship.
I think a lot of it has to do with the circumstances of what was about to happen. So yes, either way, having Brock beat either The Undertaker or The Rock would make Brock.
It makes him, absolutely. Doesn't matter.
Absolutely. But, The Undertaker's going to remain on the roster as a full-time wrestler, so maybe you don't want him to take that loss.
Okay.
Maybe he wasn't willing to put over someone as young as Brock Lesnar. And you have someone like The Rock that's like, hey, I'm going to Hollywood.
I'll do the job.
Someone who's leaving does the job. On your way out, you do the job. That's how the wrestling business works. So it makes a lot, even with Kurt Angle, it could have been Kurt Angle. It didn't matter, who goes into that match with Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar is going to be a made man afterwards. But it makes more sense to have it with The Rock because, one, The Rock is, like you said, he's a bigger star than The Undertaker. Hate to say that, but it's true. The Rock is just an infinitely bigger star than almost anybody that has ever been in the wrestling business.
Right.
So having someone like Brock go over The Rock is a big deal. And The Rock's going to Hollywood. He's going to be gone for a while. Who cares? It's a big, let him do the job on his way out. It made the perfect sense.
Mm-hmm. And with Paul Heyman being as heelish as he was, his heelish type tendencies, especially in New York, they get a lot of cheers because he's from New York,
Yes.
right? He did a lot of ECW work in New York, and this becomes one of those times where Brock and Paul Heyman, they were heel, but they come into a match like this, and people just it's partially because they started to boo The Rock because they knew he was leaving, but regardless of what Brock was doing, they started to cheer the guy because Brock was simply good. He looked great. In 2002, he was amazing in the ring.
He was a monster.
He was.
He was the beast.
A powerhouse technician. That's a rare thing to really be.
Imagine Kurt Angle, but about 5 inches taller and about 60 pounds heavier?
At least 60 pounds, right?
Yeah.
So that's what you're getting here. You're getting a guy who's world-class wrestler technician, whose bodybuilder type physique is just ridiculous. So at this time, he was going to be the guy. So I love the decision, but it took me 2 times watching it this week to finally realize that, damn, the crowd had turned on The Rock.
They did.
And there was Rocky Sucks from the beginning. There was Let's Go Lesnar throughout a little bit. There was Brock. Right?
Brock. So many different. The mood was set. The fans knew what was coming, and they wanted it. They wanted Brock. They weren't rejecting Brock like we've rejected, Roman. It was set in place. Look, Brock's the next guy. WWE's pushing him as the next guy, and the fans were like, okay, give him to us. We want him. We want to embrace this guy. He's a freak, and he's the next big thing. Okay, we're in. We're all in.
Yeah. Interesting push for him because he hadn't won any other title prior to that, right? He had no singles titles.
No. Nope.
He had no tag titles
Straight
whatsoever. So he was he was still fresh in a way because he had not
his
debuted.
Rookie year, I believe.
I think he'd just come out of a year into it.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter. Not long at all. It doesn't matter if he's 2 or 3 years in. He hadn't done anything yet. So he's the brand new face that people want to see, that they haven't really been exposed to a lot. And everything that they are exposed to is pure dominance. It's triple power bombs on Spike Dudley or Jeff Hardy. It's F5s that look amazing because people were selling them right. I know. So he was just a rare breed because he hadn't been seen before. He hadn't won any other titles. They're like, you know what? We're going to take this guy. We're going to make him the king of the ring. He's going to destroy everybody in his path. And then we're going to make him the youngest champion in the company's history.
Yes.
Okay, well, we want that, says the crowd.
We did.
And they built a scenario to support all of that in a very short amount of time. They made The Rock the champion so that it looks like he's going over a huge star in The Rock. And the match was good. Him and The Rock looked amazing in it. And
I'd say that was a great match.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Is that all you got?
I got a lot more to say, but
okay,
I mean,
keep going.
You took me off my train of thought.
Sorry,
I was running with some stuff.
You keep going.
Yeah, you're an idiot. But anyway,
stupid.
When the crowd starts doing their heel stuff towards The Rock, he kind of gives it back a little bit. He starts jawing at him a little bit. He's doing his animated points and stuff when he's doing his moves.
He understands the crowd, Bubs.
Because
that's one of the best things about The Rock.
He knows it, right? And it's unfortunate. I told you this earlier. They don't air his promo that he cuts after the match because Brock leaves and it goes dark, of course, and it's on YouTube. But The Rock cuts a heel promo on everyone in New York. Obviously, he's leaving to go do movies and such, and that's what sets up his heel run when he returns as Hollywood Rock, which is not too bad. A lot of people like it. I personally hate it because I'm a rock face guy. You're all about it. I don't like it. I don't even want to talk about it. But he sets it up nicely, and that's The Rock. He had the freedom to do that. Obviously, he could tell I forget who the ref was in that match, but he can tell him, hey, I'm getting a mic right after this. Give me a mic, and I'm going to cut something, make sure the cameras are off. And he relays that information, and the cameras are cut, and The Rock is sitting there cutting a promo in front of where were they? Long Island, right? The Long Island crowd doing his thing. So I know you want to talk about the sequence at the end, so I know
do.
That's kind of where I'm going to let you fall in here.
That the match itself, the entirety of the match was good to great. It was a great match in my opinion. The best part of the match was that ending sequence. Yeah, throughout the match you had the dynamic of Paul Heyman on the outside of the ring, tripping The Rock a bunch and, cutting him off. But that ending sequence, Bubs, when The Rock goes for the rock bottom, he hits the spine buster, and this is when usually the crowd pops. It's like, oh yeah, here comes the most electrifying move in sports entertainment. But as soon as he hits the spine buster, boos start raining down on The Rock. He does the whole elbow pad thing, throws it in the crowd, and then Brock pops up, and the crowd eats it. The crowd loves it
because they thought he was hitting F5 right away.
I thought he was.
I did too.
I thought he was gonna hit the F5, but no, it just keeps going. Clothesline, Bubs. Counters to. He goes for the F5, and The Rock counters it. And The Rock was always really good at countering kind of finishing moves. He doesn't get enough credit for some of the finishes to Rock matches are so good.
They are.
Whether he's taking the finisher, the best stunner taker of all time, but just that entire sequence, the counters to finishing moves, two rock bottoms get countered, and then when he finally hits the F5 and the crowd erupts.
Big one.
1, 2, 3, the crowd goes insane. They got their man, and they pan around the crowd, and you just see everyone just erupting in cheers, and that doesn't happen now.
No.
That would not happen nowadays if WWE was like, look, and they've done it. They did it with Roman, like, look, this is the guy going forward. Get behind him. Let's go. Let's do this thing. And the crowd's like, nah, fuck you, man. That's not our guy.
Yeah.
We'd rather bring Santino back and give him a world championship. We'll pop for that. But the crowd was into it. They wanted Brock. They were like, okay, Rock's gonna leave us. That's fine, because we're getting Brock, and this guy's gonna be around for years to come. He's gonna be our champ forever.
Yeah.
I mean, that didn't happen, but
he did well for a while though.
He did, and that's kind of what the fans were like. Okay, Rock's gonna leave us. We've got Brock, and we can hold on to Brock for so long. And unfortunately, that's not how it happened. But that's how we felt as fans, and you can feel the electricity in that arena. You can feel the love that Brock was getting, and just the not the hate that Rock was getting, but it was kind of like an apathy, like, hey, he's leaving us. He'd rather Hollywood than us the wrestling fans.
Yeah.
He doesn't care about us because he's going to go and make millions of dollars doing movies. So, fuck that. We want Brock because Brock's the wrestler. Brock's for us. He's not going to go to Hollywood. He's not going to leave wrestling for bigger money someplace else.
Yeah, like football or UFC.
Yeah. So, or the IWGP heavyweight title. So, yeah. So that's kind of how the crowd felt, and the electricity was it was palpable. You could taste it. You could feel the goosebumps rising, the hair standing up on your arms.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a great way to end an amazing pay-per-view.
It was the best match to put on at the end. The whole card construction was very well done. Loved all of it. And to have an ending like that, where everybody essentially now is going home happy, because even if they weren't about Brock, they got to see The Rock put on his best stuff. They got to see Brock put on his great moveset. If they didn't like any of that, they had Triple H and Shawn Michaels for 45 minutes before that, right? Yeah. So they got everything that they wanted, and there was a lot of stuff in this card for everybody to see. That's why this one easily is the best SummerSlam card ever, I think. Nothing competes it, and the way it ends is amazing. The last two matches, Bubs, God, match 7 and 8, like that's hard to beat on any card. Honestly,
either one of those two could have been the main event, and then before that, there was no filler. There was absolutely no filler matches throughout the entirety of the pay-per-view. Even Undertaker and Test, that's the Undertaker. So your last three matches are, let me reel off these names for you: Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, The Rock, and Brock Lesnar.
I'm watching all of them.
Yes. I mean, sure, I left out one other person, but he can He can stay off that list. Anyway, to end a pay-per-view with those 5 people in the ring, that just shows just how strong this roster was at this
Yeah.
time.
And like I said, Bubs, 15 out of 18 are world champions. So that's a ridiculous stat.
That's
3
a
people
stupid
on this
stat.
card are not world champions. That's ridiculous. It means they're all going to put on good stuff, or they're all relevant enough that we're going to watch.
The amount of world championships on this card, you have
That's stupid too.
You have Ric Flair 16, The
Mhm.
Rock 8, 9,
Mm-hmm.
something
8,
like
I
that.
think.
8, because he won one more after that. He was a 7-time world champion,
Mm.
and then because he held the record for WWE championships at this point, he had 7, and he won it again from CM Punk. Anyway, 11 for Edge, 14 for Triple H, 15.
13 or 14 for him, yeah.
14, okay. Let's see. Rey
Undertaker's
Mysterio,
got
2,
5.
Undertaker.
Jericho's got...
Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit.
Yeah. Van Damme. Mm-hmm.
Van Damme is... remember that?
Yep, I do.
Anyway, Cena wins, we riot. But this match...
Well, he didn't win, thank God.
Thank God. I almost wish he would have won.
Just to see what the people would have done.
It would have been chaos. Absolute anarchy. Anarchy Rules, a really terrible ECW game for that.
Yeah, that was atrocious.
But this card is absolutely stacked. The roster at this point is absolutely stacked, and that's why they needed the brand split, because you had so many top guys. If you don't have the brand split, you just have one set of championships.
Yeah.
Look at all the guys that you have to try to give TV time to.
Think about the people they left off the card, though. Hogan isn't on the card.
The
Big
Hardys
Show isn't on the card. I'm surprised Hulk Hogan didn't make it. Cena, though, I remember. William Regal, we've mentioned a couple times, right? So there's at least a handful of names right there that were relevant at the time that just they didn't have time to put in because the top of the cream of the crop was here.
It doesn't make sense just how stacked this roster was and just how stacked. That's something we haven't talked about. I feel like that's something that we need to kind of delve into at a later time, is at what point in time in WWE history was the roster the strongest? And
oh man,
this makes a strong case for that.
Because
Stone Cold wasn't retired at the time, right?
No, he was.
It was that next. It was that next WrestleMania, right?
Yeah, he was done after WrestleMania 19.
Yes.
So yeah, it'd be in the summer. Or after this one, so...
Yeah, so this roster was so strong,
Mm.
so good, and this card proves it. I mean, WWE hit a home run. I don't know if they did it just based off of skill or just blind luck, but this card hit on all cylinders, and from start to finish, which is something I've said a lot during this show.
You have.
From start to finish... This was an A. I mean, what grade would you give this? I give this personally an A. I don't think it's an A+, but it's definitely an A, teetering on an A+. Maybe one of the best pay-per-views that WWE ever put together.
This is literally one of the best pay-per-views they've ever done, let alone this being a best SummerSlam. This is up there with some of the best stuff that they've done, and it's hard not to call it an A+ from my angle. But I'm going to stick with the A on it if we're going to do that. I want to say A+ as well, but there is a little some differences that I would have had done that would have made it better in my opinion. But
yeah, like
I loved it.
So much un-Americans on the
cover. A little less un-Americans. Get them out. Don't interrupt my Test and Undertaker match.
Yeah.
Overall, though, Bubs, I loved it. Loved it all.
Yeah, absolutely. This was an amazing pay-per-view. This was an amazing show. WWE at this time was at its best, and I can't say anything else other than by far the best show of that year, one of the best pay-per-views of all time, and definitely the best SummerSlam of all time. So, with all that being said, we would love to hear what you guys have to think about SummerSlam 2002. Have you watched it recently? When was the last time you watched it? We want to hear all that. You can join in the conversation on Twitter at CAU Wrestling, at Crispy Quick, at Kenny Oak Sports. You can hit us up on all those Twitter handles. You can also join in the conversation on Facebook. Just search Collar and Elbow Wrestling. You will see us. We will talk to you. We love all of you, and thank you so much for joining us once again on our journey through this crazy world called pro wrestling. We will see you next time. Tell us what you want us to talk about. We're always here listening to our fans. And with our fans together, all of us, we can make wrestling great again. Thank you guys, and we'll see you next time.